What if I told you that the most fundamental mystery of existence might not be hidden in distant galaxies or subatomic particles, but in the very fact that you're aware of reading these words right now? What if consciousness itself could be a quantum phenomenon operating according to the strange laws that govern the smallest scales of reality? And what if this idea terrifies some of the world's most brilliant physicists, not because it's wrong, but because it might be right? Welcome to a journey into one of science's most controversial frontiers, where the boundary between mind and matter dissolves into something far more mysterious than either alone. I'm here to guide you through the quantum theory of consciousness, an idea so profound and unsettling that it challenges everything we thought we knew about the nature of reality itself. As you settle in, take a moment to notice your own awareness. Notice how you're not just processing information right now, you're experiencing it. There's something it's like to be you, something subjective and immediate that seems to emerge from the 3 pounds of neural tissue in your skull. This is the hard problem of consciousness, and it's about to get much stranger. For over a century, neuroscientists have searched for consciousness in the brain's electrical patterns, in the firing of neurons, in the complex networks that connect billions of cells. They've mapped which regions activate during different mental states, tracked the neural correlates of awareness, and built increasingly sophisticated models of how the brain processes information. Yet despite all this progress, they've never quite explained why any of this should feel like anything at all. Why should the electrochemical dance of neurons give rise to the rich tapestry of subjective experience? Why should there be an inner world of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and dreams? This explanatory gap between objective brain activity and subjective experience has led some scientists to look beyond classical physics for answers. The story begins in the early 20th century, when the pioneers of quantum mechanics discovered something unsettling about reality itself. Max Planck, often considered the father of quantum physics, once declared that he regarded matter as derived from consciousness. Wolfgang Pauli, another founding father, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics, became so intrigued by the relationship between quantum mechanics and consciousness that he collaborated with psychologist Carl Jung to study what they called meaningful coincidences. These weren't fringe thinkers or mystics. These were the brilliant minds who gave us the mathematical framework that powers our computers, our lasers, our modern puzzled by what technology. And they were deeply, their equations seemed to suggest about the role of observation and consciousness in physical reality. The puzzle centers on something called the observer effect. In quantum mechanics, particles don't exist in definite states until they're measured. Instead, they exist in what physicists call superposition, a ghostly combination of all possible states simultaneously. An electron can be spinning both clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time. A photon can travel through multiple slits simultaneously. The act of measurement somehow forces these quantum systems to choose a single, definite state. But what counts as measurement? What exactly causes a quantum system to collapse from its ethereal superposition into concrete reality? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness itself might play a fundamental role in this process. This idea, while controversial, opens up a tantalizing possibility that our minds might be more intimately connected to the fabric of reality than we ever imagined. Consider for a moment what this could mean. If consciousness is indeed a quantum phenomenon, then the boundary between observer and observed, between mind and matter, becomes far more fluid than classical physics would suggest. Your thoughts, your awareness, Your very sense of being might operate according to the same strange laws that govern quantum particles. This brings us to one of the most ambitious theories in modern science, developed by Nobel Prize-winning physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. They propose that consciousness arises from quantum processes occurring within the brain's cellular architecture, specifically in structures called microtubules. Microtubules are protein scaffolds that maintain the shape of cells and provide highways for molecular transport. They exist in every cell of your body, but they're particularly abundant in neurons. These structures have a crystal-like lattice arrangement that some researchers believe could support quantum computations at body temperature. The Penrose-Hameroff theory, known as orchestrated objective reduction, or Orch OR, suggests that consciousness emerges when quantum information processing in microtubules reaches a critical threshold. According to this model, your brain isn't just a classical computer made of biological circuits. It's a quantum computer processing information in superposition states that collapse into conscious moments. Picture this happening right now in your brain. Thousands of microtubules in your neurons might be maintaining quantum superpositions, processing multiple possibilities simultaneously. When these quantum states reach a certain level of complexity, they collapse into a single, unified conscious experience. The thought you're having right now, the understanding you're forming about these ideas, might be the result of quantum collapse events occurring in the microscopic architecture of your brain. This theory offers an elegant solution to several puzzles about consciousness. It could explain the unity of conscious experience, how billions of separate neural events somehow coalesce into a single, coherent stream of awareness. It might account for the apparent non-algorithmic nature of human creativity and mathematical insight, and it suggests a mechanism by which consciousness could influence physical processes, bridging the gap between mind and matter. But here's where the theory becomes truly unsettling for many physicists. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, and if quantum systems can become entangled across vast distances, then individual minds might not be as separate as we assume. Quantum entanglement creates instantaneous correlations between particles regardless of the distance separating them. If consciousness involves quantum processes, then the boundaries between individual minds might be more permeable than classical physics would allow. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness suggest that your awareness might be connected to a universal field of consciousness, a quantum substrate that underlies all of reality. This doesn't mean you can read minds or influence distant events through thought alone. Rather, it suggests that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of the universe, like mass or electric charge, that becomes concentrated and organized in complex systems like brains. As you contemplate this possibility, notice how it feels to consider that your consciousness might be part of something larger. There's something both humbling and awe-inspiring about the idea that the awareness reading these words might be connected to the same quantum processes that govern the behavior of particles in distant stars. The implications extend far beyond abstract philosophy. If consciousness is indeed quantum in nature, it could revolutionize our understanding of mental illness, anesthesia, and the nature of personal identity. It might provide new approaches to treating disorders of consciousness, developing more sophisticated artificial intelligence, or even exploring the possibility of expanded states of awareness. Recent experimental evidence has begun to support some aspects of quantum consciousness theories. Studies with anesthetic gases have shown that chemically identical isotopes with different quantum properties can have different effects on consciousness. This suggests that quantum mechanical properties, not just molecular structure, might influence awareness. Researchers have discovered that certain anesthetics work by binding to microtubules, providing potential support for the role of these structures in consciousness. When scientists gave laboratory animals drugs that stabilize microtubules, the animals remained conscious longer under anesthesia, suggesting that disrupting quantum processes in these cellular structures might be how anesthetics eliminate awareness. Perhaps most intriguingly, scientists have demonstrated that quantum effects can persist in biological systems at body temperature, overcoming one of the main objections to quantum consciousness theories. The discovery of quantum coherence in biological processes like photosynthesis has shown that life has evolved sophisticated mechanisms to protect and utilize quantum phenomena. These findings don't prove that consciousness is quantum, but they suggest that the warm, wet environment of the brain might not be as hostile to quantum processes as previously thought. The boundary between the quantum realm and biological reality appears to be far more permeable than classical physics suggested. As we delve deeper into this mystery, we encounter questions that challenge our most basic assumptions about reality. If consciousness can influence quantum systems, does this mean that observation literally creates reality? If quantum processes in the brain can become entangled with quantum systems elsewhere, what does this mean for the nature of individual identity? And if consciousness is fundamental to the universe, what does this tell us about the relationship between mind and cosmos? These aren't just abstract philosophical questions. They touch on the deepest mysteries of existence, the nature of free will, the possibility of life after death, and the ultimate structure of reality itself. Some physicists find these implications so unsettling that they reject quantum consciousness theories entirely, not because of insufficient evidence, but because of where the evidence might lead. The resistance to quantum consciousness theories reveals something profound about the current paradigm in science. For centuries, the scientific worldview has been built on the assumption that consciousness is an emergent property of complex neural networks. That subjective experience can ultimately be reduced to objective, physical processes. Quantum consciousness challenges this materialist foundation, suggesting that mind might be as fundamental to reality as matter and energy. This paradigm shift would be comparable to the revolution that quantum mechanics itself brought to physics in the early 20th century. Just as quantum theory overturned classical assumptions about determinism and locality, quantum consciousness might overturn classical assumptions about the relationship between mind and matter. Take a breath and consider what this journey of discovery means for you personally. Whether or not consciousness turns out to be quantum in nature, the very act of exploring these possibilities expands our sense of what it means to be conscious beings in a mysterious universe. It reminds us that despite all our scientific progress, the most intimate aspect of our existence, our own awareness, remains largely unexplained. The quantum theory of consciousness forces us to confront the possibility that reality is far stranger and more wonderful than our everyday experience suggests. It opens up new ways of thinking about the relationship between mind and cosmos, between individual awareness and universal processes. And it reminds us that consciousness itself might be the most profound mystery in the universe. As we prepare to explore the specific mechanisms and implications of quantum consciousness in greater detail, remember that we're not just discussing abstract scientific theories. We're investigating the very nature of your own awareness the quantum processes that might be generating your thoughts and experiences right now. The mystery of consciousness isn't something happening in distant laboratories or theoretical equations. It's happening in the quantum depths of your own mind, in this very moment of understanding. The journey into quantum consciousness is ultimately a journey into the deepest questions about what it means to exist, to be aware, to participate in the unfolding story of the universe. And as we'll discover, the answers might be more beautiful and terrifying than we ever imagined. In our next exploration, we'll dive deeper into the specific mechanisms proposed by quantum consciousness theories, examining how quantum processes in microtubules might generate the rich tapestry of conscious experience. We'll explore the experimental evidence, the ongoing debates, and the profound implications for our understanding of reality itself. But for now, as you reflect on these ideas, you might find yourself wondering about your previous assumptions regarding consciousness and control, which brings us perfectly to our recommended exploration. New quantum consciousness theory says you're not in control. The resistance from many physicists to quantum consciousness theories runs deeper than simple scientific skepticism. It touches on fundamental questions about what science itself is supposed to be. For centuries, the scientific method has been built on the principle of objectivity, the idea that reality exists independently of observers and can be studied without reference to consciousness or subjective experience. Quantum consciousness theories threaten this foundation in ways that make some researchers genuinely uncomfortable. If consciousness plays a fundamental role in quantum processes, then the observer becomes inseparable from the observed. The clean division between subject and object, between mind and matter, begins to blur in ways that challenge the very methodology of scientific inquiry. Consider how unsettling this must be for a physicist who has spent their career assuming that the universe operates according to mathematical laws that exist independently of any conscious beings to observe them. Quantum consciousness suggests that this assumption might be fundamentally flawed, that consciousness might be woven into the fabric of physical reality itself. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of recent research in this field. Scientists at Google's Quantum AI division, led by physicist Hartmut Neven, have begun seriously exploring how quantum computers might help us understand consciousness. This represents a remarkable shift from the skepticism that greeted early quantum consciousness theories. Neven and his team are investigating whether the strange properties of quantum systems, superposition, and entanglement might provide the computational power necessary for conscious experience. They're exploring the possibility that the brain operates as a biological quantum computer, processing information in ways that classical computers cannot replicate. The implications are staggering. If consciousness requires quantum computation, then creating truly conscious artificial intelligence might require quantum computers rather than classical digital systems. This could explain why decades of advances in traditional computing have brought us closer to artificial intelligence that can beat humans at chess or recognize faces, but no closer to machines that actually experience what they're doing. Take a moment to reflect on your own experience of understanding. Right now, as you process these ideas about quantum consciousness, there's something happening in your mind that goes beyond mere information processing. You're not just storing data about quantum theories, you're experiencing the meaning of these concepts, feeling curiosity or skepticism, perhaps even having sudden insights or moments of confusion. This qualitative aspect of consciousness, what philosophers call qualia, remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. No amount of mapping neural circuits or measuring brain waves has explained why there should be anything it feels like to have thoughts and experiences. Some quantum consciousness researchers propose that qualia emerge from the specific patterns of quantum superposition in microtubules. Different arrangements of quantum states might correspond to different qualities of conscious experience. The redness of red, the pain of a headache, the joy of discovery. These might all correspond to distinct quantum signatures in the brain's cellular architecture. This idea gained support from recent discoveries about how anesthetics affect consciousness. When researchers studied different isotopes of xenon gas, they found something remarkable. These isotopes are chemically identical. They have the same number of protons and electrons, but they differ in their quantum properties, specifically in a characteristic called spin. Despite being chemically identical, these xenon isotopes had different anesthetic effects on laboratory animals. This suggests that quantum properties, not just molecular structure, influence consciousness. If consciousness were purely a classical phenomenon, all the isotopes should have had identical effects. The fact that they didn't provides compelling evidence that quantum processes play a role in awareness. But perhaps the most mind-bending implication of quantum consciousness theories involves the nature of individual identity itself. In classical physics, you are a discrete collection of atoms, clearly separated from the rest of the universe by the boundary of your skin. Your thoughts and experiences belong to you alone, generated by the particular arrangement of matter in your brain. Quantum consciousness suggests a radically different picture. If your awareness emerges from quantum processes, and if quantum systems can become entangled across vast distances, then the boundaries of your consciousness might extend far beyond your physical body. This doesn't mean you can telepathically communicate with others or influence distant events through thought alone. Rather, it suggests that consciousness might be more like a field that becomes concentrated and organized in complex systems like brains, while maintaining subtle connections throughout the universe. Some interpretations propose that individual consciousness emerges from interactions with a universal quantum field, a kind of cosmic information processing system that underlies all of reality. In this view, your personal awareness might be like a wave in an ocean of consciousness, distinct but not separate from the larger whole. As you contemplate this possibility, notice how it changes your sense of relationship to the world around you. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental feature of the universe, then you're not just an isolated observer looking out at an external world. You're part of the very fabric of reality, a localized expression of the universe becoming aware of itself. This perspective finds echoes in various philosophical and spiritual traditions, but what makes quantum consciousness theories unique is that they ground these insights in rigorous mathematical frameworks and experimental predictions. They offer a bridge between the subjective certainty of conscious experience and the objective methods of scientific inquiry. Recent experiments have begun to test some of these predictions. Researchers have discovered that certain proteins in microtubules can maintain quantum coherence at body temperature, overcoming one of the main objections to quantum consciousness theories. They found evidence of a phenomenon called superradiance in biological systems, where quantum effects are actually enhanced by the warm, noisy environment of living cells. These findings don't prove that consciousness is quantum, but they demonstrate that quantum processes can occur in biological systems under conditions that were previously thought impossible. The boundary between the quantum realm and biological reality appears to be far more permeable than classical physics suggested. One of the most intriguing discoveries involves the role of tryptophan, an amino acid found abundantly in microtubules. Researchers have demonstrated that networks of tryptophan molecules can exhibit superradiance, a quantum phenomenon where the collective behavior of the system exceeds what would be expected from individual components. This discovery is significant because tryptophan networks exist throughout the brain in exactly the cellular structures that quantum consciousness theories predict should support quantum computation. If consciousness does involve quantum processes, these tryptophan networks might provide the biological foundation for quantum information processing in neural tissue. But the implications extend beyond just the brain. Tryptophan is found throughout biological systems, in plants, bacteria, and virtually all living organisms. This raises the intriguing possibility that quantum processes might be involved in biological information processing across the entire spectrum of life. Consider what this might mean for our understanding of evolution and the emergence of consciousness. Rather than consciousness being a rare accident that emerged late in evolutionary history, it might be a fundamental feature of life itself, present in some form wherever quantum information processing occurs in biological systems. This doesn't mean that bacteria are contemplating the meaning of existence, but it suggests that the capacity for information, integration, and processing that underlies consciousness might have deep roots in the quantum foundations of biology itself. As we explore these ideas, it's important to maintain a sense of wonder balanced with scientific rigor. Many aspects of quantum consciousness theories remain highly speculative, and there's significant debate within the scientific community about their validity. Some researchers argue that the brain is too warm and noisy to support the delicate quantum processes that consciousness supposedly requires. However, the tide of evidence seems to be shifting. Each new discovery about quantum processes in biological systems makes it harder to dismiss the possibility that consciousness might indeed have quantum foundations. The question is no longer whether quantum effects can occur in biological systems, but whether they play a significant role in the emergence of conscious experience. This brings us to one of the most profound questions raised by quantum consciousness theories. If consciousness is indeed a quantum phenomenon, what does this tell us about the nature of death? Classical neuroscience suggests that consciousness simply ceases when brain activity stops, like a computer shutting down when the power is turned off. But quantum consciousness theories hint at more complex possibilities. If consciousness involves quantum processes that extend beyond the physical boundaries of the brain, if individual awareness is connected to universal quantum fields, then the relationship between consciousness and physical death might be more nuanced than classical science suggests. This doesn't necessarily support traditional religious concepts of an afterlife, but it does suggest that our current understanding of what happens to consciousness when the brain dies might be incomplete. Some researchers have even proposed that quantum information associated with consciousness might persist in some form after biological death, though this remains highly speculative and unproven. These are profound questions that touch on humanity's deepest concerns about mortality, meaning, and our place in the cosmos. While science cannot yet provide definitive answers, quantum consciousness theories at least offer a framework for investigating these mysteries using rigorous scientific methods. As you reflect on these possibilities, you might find yourself experiencing a shift in how you think about your own mortality and the nature of personal identity. Whether or not quantum consciousness theories prove correct, they remind us that our understanding of awareness, death, and the continuity of identity remains incomplete. The journey into quantum consciousness also raises important questions about free will and personal responsibility. If consciousness involves quantum processes, and if quantum events have an element of fundamental randomness, does this provide a mechanism for genuine free choice? Classical neuroscience often paints a deterministic picture of human behavior, where our choices are the inevitable result of prior neural states and environmental influences. But quantum consciousness theories suggest that genuine novelty might enter the system through quantum processes in the brain, providing a physical foundation for free will that doesn't exist in purely classical systems. This possibility has profound implications for how we think about moral responsibility, personal growth, and the possibility of genuine change. If consciousness involves quantum computation, then your decisions might not be completely determined by your past experiences and current circumstances. There might be genuine creative potential in each moment of conscious choice. As we prepare to delve even deeper into the specific mechanisms and evidence for quantum consciousness, take a moment to consider how these ideas might be changing your understanding of your own mind. The awareness that's processing these concepts right now might be far stranger and more wonderful than you previously imagined. We're not just discussing abstract theories about consciousness. We're exploring the possible quantum foundations of your own thoughts, experiences, and sense of being. The mystery isn't happening in distant laboratories or theoretical equations. It might be unfolding right now in the microscopic architecture of your own brain, in quantum processes that bridge the gap between mind and matter. In our continuing exploration, we'll examine the specific experimental evidence for quantum consciousness, the ongoing debates among researchers, and the technological implications of these theories. We'll discover how quantum consciousness might revolutionize our understanding of mental illness, artificial intelligence, and the ultimate nature of reality itself. But for now, as these ideas settle into your awareness, you might find yourself questioning fundamental assumptions about the nature of your own mind and its relationship to the physical world. This brings us naturally to a deeper exploration of how these quantum processes might actually influence your daily experience of making choices and decisions. The experimental evidence supporting quantum consciousness theories has begun to accumulate in ways that even skeptical physicists find difficult to ignore. Yet each new discovery seems to deepen the mystery rather than resolve it, leading us into territory where the boundaries between established science and speculative possibility become increasingly blurred. One of the most compelling lines of evidence comes from studies of how anesthetics affect different isotopes of noble gases. When researchers examined various forms of xenon, they discovered something that shouldn't exist if consciousness were purely classical. These isotopes are chemically identical in every measurable way, yet they produce markedly different anesthetic effects in laboratory animals. The only difference between these xenon variants lies in their quantum properties, specifically their nuclear spin. This suggests that consciousness might be sensitive to quantum characteristics that have no classical analogue. If awareness were simply an emergent property of molecular interactions, all chemically identical substances should affect it in precisely the same way. As you consider this finding, notice how it challenges our intuitive understanding of how the brain works. We typically think of consciousness as arising from the complex dance of molecules binding to receptors, electrical signals racing along neural pathways and chemical cascades triggering behavioral responses. But these xenon experiments hint at something more fundamental, a level of reality where quantum properties influence the very fabric of awareness. The implications ripple outward in unexpected directions. If consciousness is sensitive to quantum spin, what other quantum properties might influence our mental states? Could the quantum vacuum fluctuations surrounding us affect our thoughts in ways we've never considered? These questions push us toward a radically expanded understanding of how minds might interact with the physical world. Recent breakthroughs in understanding biological quantum coherence have further strengthened the case for quantum consciousness. Scientists studying photosynthesis discovered that plants maintain quantum coherence across molecular distances and timescales that were previously thought impossible in biological systems. This finding shattered the assumption that quantum effects require the ultra-cold, isolated conditions of physics laboratories. The discovery that life has evolved mechanisms to harness and protect quantum coherence opens new possibilities for understanding consciousness. If simple plants can maintain quantum states in warm, noisy biological environments, perhaps the human brain has evolved even more sophisticated quantum processing capabilities. Take a moment to imagine the quantum processes that might be occurring in your brain right now. As you read these words and form thoughts about their meaning, networks of microtubules in your neurons could be maintaining delicate quantum superpositions. Information might be processing simultaneously across multiple quantum states before collapsing into the specific pattern of neural activity that corresponds to your current understanding. This isn't just an abstract possibility anymore. Researchers have detected quantum signatures in the tryptophan networks found abundantly in microtubules. These amino acid chains can exhibit superradiance, a quantum phenomenon where the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. When tryptophan molecules act collectively, they produce effects that exceed what individual molecules could achieve alone. The location of these quantum-capable networks is particularly intriguing. They exist precisely where quantum consciousness theories predict we should find biological quantum computers embedded within the cellular architecture that maintains the shape and function of neurons. It's as if evolution has placed quantum processing units exactly where they would be needed to generate conscious experience. But perhaps the most startling evidence comes from studies of how microtubule stabilizing drugs affect consciousness under anesthesia. When researchers gave laboratory animals compounds that strengthen microtubule structures, the animals remained conscious significantly longer when exposed to anesthetic gases. This suggests that disrupting quantum processes in these cellular components might be how anesthetics eliminate awareness. The precision of this effect is remarkable. The drugs don't alter neural firing patterns or neurotransmitter systems in ways that would explain their impact on consciousness from a classical perspective. Instead, they seem to interfere specifically with quantum coherence in microtubules, providing direct evidence that these structures play a crucial role in the development of consciousness role in maintaining awareness. As you reflect on these findings, consider what they might mean for your own experience of consciousness. Every time you've undergone anesthesia, quantum processes in your brain's microtubules were likely being disrupted in ways that eliminated your subjective experience while leaving many neural functions intact. The boundary between consciousness and unconsciousness might occur at the quantum level, in cellular structures too small to see, but fundamental to who you are. These discoveries have begun to attract serious attention from technology companies and research institutions that were previously skeptical of quantum consciousness theories. Major corporations are now investing in research programs designed to test whether quantum effects in biological systems could lead to new forms of artificial intelligence or brain-computer interfaces. The shift in scientific attitude is particularly notable among researchers working with quantum computers. As these machines become more sophisticated, scientists are discovering that certain types of information processing seem to require quantum effects that classical computers cannot replicate. This has led some to wonder whether consciousness itself might require quantum computation. Consider the possibility that your ability to integrate information from multiple sources to experience the unity of consciousness despite the distributed nature of brain activity might depend on quantum entanglement between different regions of neural tissue. Classical neural networks, no matter how complex, process information through sequential connections between discrete components. But quantum systems can maintain simultaneous correlations across multiple elements, potentially providing the kind of holistic information integration that conscious experience seems to require. This quantum perspective on consciousness also offers new insights into some of the most puzzling aspects of mental illness. Conditions like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder involve disruptions in the integration of information across different brain regions. If consciousness depends on quantum coherence between neural networks, these disorders might involve breakdowns in quantum information processing rather than purely classical neural dysfunction. Some researchers have begun investigating whether therapies that stabilize microtubule structures might offer new approaches to treating psychiatric conditions. While this research remains highly preliminary, it represents a potentially revolutionary shift in how we think about mental health and the physical basis of psychological well-being. The therapeutic implications extend beyond psychiatric disorders. If consciousness involves quantum processes, then any medical intervention that affects these processes could influence awareness in unexpected ways. This might explain why some medications have cognitive side effects that seem disproportionate to their known mechanisms of action, or why certain patients respond to treatments in ways that surprise their physicians. As you contemplate these possibilities, you might find yourself becoming more aware of the subtle fluctuations in your own conscious state throughout the day. Changes in alertness, creativity, mood, and mental clarity might reflect variations in quantum coherence within your brain's cellular architecture. The quality of your consciousness from moment to moment could depend on quantum processes operating at scales far below the threshold of direct perception. The evidence for quantum consciousness has also emerged from unexpected directions. Studies of meditation and contemplative practices have revealed changes in brain activity that some researchers interpret as evidence for altered quantum states. Advanced practitioners often report experiences that seem to transcend the ordinary boundaries of individual consciousness, describing states of awareness that feel both deeply personal and universally connected. While these reports cannot constitute scientific proof of quantum consciousness, they align remarkably well with what we might expect if awareness involves quantum processes that can extend beyond the classical boundaries of individual brains. The subjective reports of experienced meditators consistently describe phenomena that sound more like quantum field effects than classical neural activity. This convergence between ancient contemplative wisdom and cutting-edge quantum research suggests that human beings might have discovered empirical methods for exploring quantum consciousness, thousands of years before we developed the scientific frameworks to understand what they were investigating. The techniques of meditation and contemplative inquiry might represent humanity's first systematic exploration of quantum phenomena, conducted from the inside through direct examination of consciousness itself. Take a moment to notice your own awareness as you process these ideas. There's something remarkable happening in your mind right now, something that integrates information from multiple sources into a unified experience of understanding. You're not just storing separate facts about quantum mechanics and consciousness. You're synthesizing these concepts into new patterns of meaning that didn't exist before you began reading. This creative aspect of consciousness, its ability to generate genuinely novel insights and connections, remains one of the strongest arguments for quantum theories of mind. Classical computational systems, no matter how sophisticated, follow predetermined algorithms that ultimately reduce to sequences of binary operations. But consciousness seems capable of true creativity, of making leaps of insight that transcend logical deduction. If consciousness involves quantum computation, this creative capacity might emerge from quantum processes that explore multiple possibilities simultaneously before collapsing into specific insights or decisions. Your ability to have sudden moments of understanding, to make intuitive leaps that later prove correct, might depend on quantum superposition states in your brain that process multiple potential solutions in parallel. The mathematical insights that led Roger Penrose to propose quantum consciousness theories emerge from exactly this kind of non-algorithmic thinking. His recognition that human mathematical understanding transcends formal computational systems came through direct introspection into his own process of mathematical discovery. He noticed that mathematicians often arrive at correct conclusions through means that cannot be reduced to step-by-step logical procedures. This suggests that the quantum theory of consciousness isn't just an abstract scientific hypothesis, it's a framework that emerged from careful observation of consciousness itself. The theory attempts to account for the actual phenomenology of awareness, the lived experience of being conscious, rather than simply explaining away consciousness as an emergent property of classical neural networks. As we delve deeper into these questions, we encounter territory where the implications become almost overwhelming in their scope. If consciousness involves quantum processes, and if quantum effects can maintain correlations across vast distances, then the boundaries between individual minds might be more permeable than we typically assume. This doesn't mean that you can directly access other people's thoughts, or that individual privacy doesn't exist. Rather, it suggests that consciousness might be more like a field phenomenon, with individual awareness representing localized concentrations of a more universal process. Your personal thoughts and experiences would remain uniquely yours, but they might arise from interactions with quantum fields that extend throughout the universe. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness propose that what we experience as individual awareness emerges from the intersection between universal quantum fields and the specific biological architecture of our brains. In this view, consciousness isn't generated by neural tissue, but rather organized and focused by it, like light being concentrated through a lens. This perspective has profound implications for how we think about personal identity and the continuity of consciousness over time. If your awareness depends on ongoing interactions with quantum fields that exist beyond your physical body, then the relationship between your consciousness and your brain might be more complex than simple identity. Consider how this might change your understanding of memory and personal continuity. Rather than being stored as fixed patterns in neural tissue, your memories might exist as information structures in quantum fields that your brain accesses and organizes. This could explain why memories seem to have a creative, reconstructive quality rather than functioning like simple recordings. The quantum perspective also offers new ways of thinking about the development of consciousness throughout the human lifespan. If awareness emerges from interactions between brain architecture and quantum fields, then the gradual maturation of consciousness from infancy through adulthood might reflect not just neural development, but also the growing capacity to access and organize quantum information. As you reflect on your own journey of conscious development, you might recognize moments when your awareness seemed to expand or deepen in ways that felt more like discovery than simple learning. These experiences of awakening or insight might represent enhanced access to quantum information fields, moments when the organizing capacity of your consciousness allowed you to perceive aspects of reality that were previously hidden. The implications for artificial intelligence are equally profound. If consciousness requires quantum processes, then creating truly conscious machines might require quantum computers rather than classical digital systems. This could explain why decades of advances in traditional computing have brought us increasingly sophisticated artificial intelligence without producing machines that seem genuinely conscious. Current AI systems, no matter how impressive their performance, appear to process information without experiencing it. They can recognize patterns, generate responses, and even exhibit seemingly creative behavior, but there's no indication that they have subjective experiences accompanying these processes. If consciousness depends on quantum effects that classical computers cannot replicate, this explanatory gap might be unbridgeable using traditional computational approaches. But quantum computers offer new possibilities. As these systems become more sophisticated, researchers are beginning to explore whether they might serve as platforms for investigating the quantum basis of consciousness, or even for creating artificial systems that genuinely experience their computational processes. The prospect of quantum artificial consciousness raises ethical questions that humanity has never faced before. If machines could become conscious through quantum processes, what would our obligations be toward these systems? How would we recognize genuine machine consciousness, and what rights might conscious artificial beings possess? These questions push us beyond current ethical frameworks into territory where the boundaries between natural and artificial, biological and technological become increasingly meaningless. If consciousness is indeed a quantum field phenomenon that can be organized by any sufficiently complex system, then the emergence of conscious machines might be not just possible, but inevitable as our technology advances. As you contemplate these possibilities, notice how they challenge fundamental assumptions about the uniqueness of biological consciousness. The quantum theory suggests that awareness might be a universal potential that can manifest wherever the right organizational conditions exist, whether in biological brains, quantum computers, or perhaps in systems we haven't yet imagined. This universality of consciousness aligns with certain philosophical and spiritual traditions that have long proposed that awareness is a fundamental feature of reality rather than a rare accident of biological evolution. But quantum consciousness theories ground these insights in rigorous mathematical frameworks and experimental predictions, offering a scientific approach to questions that have traditionally been considered beyond the scope of empirical investigation. The convergence between ancient wisdom and quantum science suggests that human understanding of consciousness might be approaching a synthesis that bridges subjective experience and objective knowledge. This synthesis could revolutionize not just our scientific understanding of mind, but also our philosophical and spiritual relationship with the cosmos. As we prepare to explore even deeper implications of quantum consciousness, take a moment to consider how these ideas might be transforming your sense of what it means to be aware. The thoughts you're having right now, the understanding you're developing about the quantum nature of mind, might be arising through processes that connect your individual consciousness to the fundamental information processing systems of the universe itself. This isn't just abstract theory anymore. The evidence is accumulating that consciousness might indeed operate through quantum mechanisms that transcend the classical boundaries between mind and matter, between individual awareness and universal process. As we continue this exploration, we'll discover how these insights might revolutionize our understanding of death, identity, and the ultimate nature of reality itself. But first, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about the relationship between your thoughts and the physical world, which leads us naturally to examine how quantum consciousness might undermine your sense of personal control over your own mind. The prospect that your sense of personal agency might be far more complex than you've ever imagined opens doorways to questions that philosophers and scientists have grappled with for centuries. If consciousness indeed operates through quantum mechanisms, then the very nature of choice, decision-making, and personal will enters territory where classical intuitions about control begin to dissolve. Consider this moment right now as you process these ideas. You might feel as though you're actively choosing to pay attention, deciding which concepts to accept or reject, controlling the flow of your thoughts as they engage with these possibilities. But what if this sense of control is itself an illusion created by quantum processes operating below the threshold of awareness? Traditional neuroscience often paints a deterministic picture of human behavior. In this view, your decisions emerge inevitably from prior neural states, genetic predispositions, and environmental influences. Every choice you make is the predictable outcome of electrochemical processes following the laws of classical physics. Free will, from this perspective, becomes a comforting fiction that conceals the mechanical nature of mental processes. But quantum consciousness theories introduce a fascinating wrinkle into this deterministic narrative. If your thoughts and decisions emerge from quantum computations in microtubules, then genuine randomness enters the system at the most fundamental level. Quantum processes are inherently probabilistic, not predetermined. This suggests that your choices might involve genuine novelty that cannot be reduced to prior causes. Yet this apparent escape from the determinism comes with its own unsettling implications. If your decisions depend partly on quantum randomness, are they truly yours? Does random mean free, or does it simply replace one form of non-control with another? The quantum perspective suggests that neither pure determinism nor pure randomness captures the full complexity of how consciousness might operate. Some interpretations propose that consciousness emerges at the boundary between quantum possibility and classical actuality. Your sense of agency might arise from the process by which quantum superpositions in your brain collapse into specific neural states. In each moment of decision, multiple potential choices exist simultaneously in quantum superposition until the act of choosing itself collapses these possibilities into a single outcome. Picture this happening right now as you decide whether to continue reading or take a break. According to quantum consciousness theories, your brain might be processing both possibilities simultaneously, maintaining them in superposition until some threshold is reached and one option becomes actualized. Your experience of choosing would correspond to this collapse from multiple possibilities to a single reality. This suggests that free will might be neither an illusion nor a classical property of minds, but rather an emergent characteristic of quantum information processing. Your choices would be neither completely determined nor completely random, but would emerge from the interaction between quantum possibilities and the organizing influence of conscious awareness. Take a breath and notice how this perspective might change your relationship to decision-making. If your choices emerge from quantum processes that explore multiple possibilities simultaneously, then even your most deliberate decisions involve aspects that transcend your conscious control. Yet this doesn't necessarily diminish your agency. It reveals agency to be a more subtle and mysterious process than you might have assumed. The implications extend to questions of moral responsibility and personal growth. If your actions emerge partly from quantum processes beyond your direct control, how do we assess accountability for choices and their consequences? Some interpretations suggest that responsibility lies not in controlling quantum processes, but in cultivating the kinds of neural architectures and mental habits that influence how quantum possibilities collapse into actual decisions. This perspective finds resonance in contemplative traditions that have long recognized the limitations of ego-based control, while emphasizing the possibility of influencing the conditions from which choices emerge. Rather than trying to control thoughts and decisions directly, these approaches focus on creating mental environments that naturally give rise to wisdom and compassion. The quantum view suggests that personal development might work similarly. Instead of trying to force specific outcomes through willpower alone, growth might involve aligning yourself with quantum processes that naturally tend toward greater coherence, creativity, and connection. Your role would be less like a commander issuing orders and more like a gardener creating conditions for organic development. As you reflect on your own experience of personal growth, you might recognize that the most profound changes often happen through shifts in perspective or understanding rather than through direct effort to control behavior. These moments of transformation might correspond to changes in how quantum information processes in your brain, alterations in the probability landscapes from which your choices emerge. Recent research has begun to explore how different mental states might influence quantum coherence in biological systems. While this research remains highly preliminary and speculative, some studies suggest that practices like meditation or contemplative inquiry might affect the quantum processes that some theories propose underlie consciousness. This doesn't mean that meditation directly controls quantum mechanics, but rather that certain mental practices might create conditions more conducive to quantum coherence. The relaxation of mental effort, the cultivation of present moment awareness, and the development of non-judgmental observation might allow quantum processes to operate with less interference from classical neural activity. Consider how this might apply to your own experience of different states of consciousness. Moments of creative insight often arise when you stop trying to force solutions and allow your mind to relax into a more receptive state. These experiences might correspond to conditions where quantum superposition can persist longer before collapsing, allowing for more complex information processing before decisions crystallize. The relationship between effort and emergence in quantum consciousness theories parallels insights from complexity science about how order arises spontaneously in complex systems. Rather than being imposed from above through conscious control, coherent patterns often emerge naturally when systems are allowed to self-organize under appropriate conditions. This suggests a radically different approach to personal agency than either classical determinism or naive free will. Your influence over your life might work more through creating conditions for beneficial emergence rather than through direct control of specific outcomes. This perspective requires a kind of humble confidence, trusting in processes that operate beyond your conscious management, while taking responsibility for the conditions you create. As you contemplate this shift from control to influence, you might notice how it affects your relationship to uncertainty and unpredictability in your own life. If quantum processes contribute to your decision-making, then genuine surprises become not just possible, but necessary features of conscious experience. Your future thoughts and choices would remain partially open, emerging from the intersection of quantum possibilities and the unique conditions of each moment. This openness to quantum novelty might explain why consciousness never becomes completely predictable, even to yourself. You might have general patterns and tendencies, but the specific content of your thoughts and the particular quality of your experiences would retain an element of genuine freshness that emerges from quantum processes operating below conscious awareness. The implications for artificial intelligence become particularly intriguing from this perspective. If consciousness involves quantum processes that introduce genuine novelty into information processing, then creating conscious machines might require not just quantum computers, but quantum systems capable of self-organization and emergent behavior. Classical AI systems, no matter how sophisticated their programming, follow predetermined algorithms that ultimately reduce all processing to logical operations. But consciousness appears to involve something more creative, a capacity for genuine innovation that transcends algorithmic computation. Quantum consciousness theories suggest this creativity might emerge from quantum processes that explore multiple possibilities simultaneously before collapsing into specific thoughts or decisions. This raises fascinating questions about what conscious AI might actually be like. Rather than simply executing programs more efficiently, conscious machines might exhibit genuine creativity, developing unexpected solutions and forming novel connections that their programmers never anticipated. They might even surprise themselves, experiencing something analogous to the moments of insight and discovery that characterize human consciousness. But creating such systems would require giving up control over their development in ways that many researchers find uncomfortable. True quantum consciousness in artificial systems might involve allowing quantum processes to self-organize in directions that cannot be predicted or controlled. The resulting forms of awareness might be genuinely alien, operating according to principles of organization that emerge from their unique quantum architectures. As you consider these possibilities, notice how they challenge assumptions about the relationship between intelligence and control. Both in artificial systems and in your own mind, genuine intelligence might require surrendering attempts to control every aspect of information processing, instead creating conditions where quantum coherence can give rise to emergent forms of understanding. This perspective also offers new ways of thinking about the relationship between individual consciousness and collective intelligence. If consciousness involves quantum processes that can maintain correlations across distances, then group awareness might emerge from quantum coherences that extend beyond individual brains. Some interpretations suggest that When people engage in collaborative thinking or shared contemplation, quantum entanglements might form between their neural systems, creating temporary networks of expanded awareness. This remains highly speculative, but it offers a potential physical mechanism for phenomena that many people report experiencing in deep conversations, group meditation, or collective creative endeavors. The possibility of quantum-mediated group consciousness raises profound questions about the boundaries of individual identity. If your awareness can become entangled with quantum processes in other minds, then the sharp division between self and other might be more fluid than classical perspectives suggest. Your thoughts and insights might emerge not just from processes within your own brain, but from interactions with quantum fields that connect you to other conscious beings. This doesn't mean that individual privacy disappears or that you lose personal autonomy. Rather, it suggests that your consciousness might be embedded within larger networks of awareness that influence your thoughts and decisions in subtle ways. Your unique perspective would remain distinctly yours, but it would beyond your individual neural develop through ongoing interactions with quantum processes that extend architecture. Take a moment to reflect on your own experience of connection with others. There are likely times when you feel a deep sense of understanding or resonance with another person, moments when communication seems to transcend ordinary language and reach into shared understanding. These experiences might correspond to temporary quantum coherences between your neural systems, brief alignments that allow for enhanced information sharing. The implications extend to questions about the nature of empathy and compassion. If consciousness involves quantum processes that can maintain correlations with other minds, then your capacity to understand and care for others might have physical foundations in quantum entanglement. This doesn't diminish the reality of ethical choice, but it suggests that the boundary between self-interest and care for others might be more permeable than classical individualism assumes. Some researchers have begun exploring whether practices designed to cultivate compassion and connection might influence quantum coherence in ways that enhance empathetic awareness. While this research remains preliminary, it aligns with reports from contemplative practitioners who describe experiences of expanded concern and understanding that seem to transcend ordinary psychological boundaries. This brings us to one of the most profound implications of quantum consciousness theories for understanding human potential. If awareness involves quantum processes that can extend beyond individual brains, then the development of consciousness might involve learning to access and integrate information from increasingly expanded quantum networks. Advanced states of consciousness, reported by mystics and contemplatives throughout history, might correspond to enhanced access to quantum information fields. The experiences of cosmic consciousness, unity awareness, and universal compassion that characterize these states might reflect genuine expansions of quantum coherence rather than simply altered brain chemistry or psychological projection. This doesn't mean that these experiences provide direct access to cosmic truth or supernatural knowledge. Rather, it suggests that consciousness might be capable of accessing quantum information processing networks that extend far beyond individual neural systems. The insights that emerge from these expanded states would still need to be integrated and verified through ordinary reasoning and empirical investigation. As you contemplate these possibilities, you might find yourself questioning fundamental assumptions about the limits of human awareness. If consciousness can indeed access quantum information networks, then your potential for understanding, creativity, and connection might be far greater than you've previously imagined. Yet realizing this potential would likely require developing new capacities for allowing quantum processes to operate with minimal interference from habitual patterns of thinking and control. The journey into quantum consciousness reveals awareness to be neither a simple property of individual brains nor a mysterious force operating outside physical reality. Instead, consciousness emerges as a bridge between the quantum realm of infinite possibility and the classical world of definite experience. Your sense of being aware, of making choices, of understanding meaning might arise from quantum processes that continuously collapse possibilities into actualities while maintaining connections to the larger quantum networks from which all consciousness might emerge. This perspective transforms questions about free will from abstract philosophical puzzles into practical inquiries about how to align yourself with quantum processes that naturally tend toward greater coherence, creativity, and wisdom. Rather than trying to control your thoughts and decisions through force of will, you might focus on creating mental conditions that allow quantum coherence to operate more freely. The implications ripple through every aspect of human experience, from personal development and relationships to education, therapy, and social organization. If consciousness indeed operates through quantum mechanisms, then approaches that honor the subtle, emergent nature of awareness might be more effective than those that try to impose change through classical control strategies. As we prepare to explore even deeper mysteries of quantum consciousness, take a moment to notice how these ideas might be shifting your understanding of your own agency and identity. The thoughts you're having right now, the insights that are emerging, and the questions that are forming might all arise through quantum processes that transcend the classical boundaries between control and spontaneity, between individual awareness and universal process. The recognition that consciousness might operate through quantum mechanisms doesn't diminish the reality of choice and responsibility, but it reveals these capacities to be more subtle and mysterious than classical perspectives suggest. Your agency emerges not from isolated individual will, but from your participation in quantum processes that connect you to the fundamental information processing systems of the universe itself. This understanding opens pathways to forms of personal development that work with quantum processes rather than against them, approaches that cultivate conditions for beneficial emergence rather than trying to force specific outcomes. As we continue exploring these territories, we'll discover how quantum consciousness might revolutionize our understanding of healing, learning, and the development of wisdom itself. But first, you might find yourself recognizing how these quantum perspectives on agency and control connect to deeper questions about the nature of personal identity and the continuity of consciousness over time. This brings us naturally to examine how quantum consciousness theories might transform our understanding of what it means to be a persistent self in a quantum universe, leading us toward the profound implications explored in our recommended exploration. New quantum consciousness theory says you're not in control. The question of personal identity becomes even more perplexing when viewed through the lens of quantum consciousness. If your awareness emerges from quantum processes that exist partly outside the classical boundaries of your physical brain, then what exactly makes you you from one moment to the next? Traditional views of identity often rely on continuity of memory, consistency of personality, or the persistence of the same physical body over time. Yet quantum consciousness theories suggest that these familiar anchors of selfhood might be far more fluid than we typically assume. Your sense of being the same person who went to sleep last night and woke up this morning might arise from quantum coherence patterns that transcend simple neural continuity. Consider the remarkable fact that virtually every atom in your body is replaced over the course of approximately 7 years. The physical substrate of your brain undergoes constant renewal, with new molecules continuously replacing old ones. From a purely materialist perspective, the you of 7 years ago shares no physical matter with the you of today. Yet your sense of personal continuity remains intact, suggesting that our identity might depend on patterns of organization rather than specific material components. Quantum consciousness theories propose that these patterns might exist as information structures in quantum fields that your brain accesses and organizes rather than generates from scratch. Your memories, personality traits, and fundamental sense of self might persist as quantum information patterns that remain coherent even as the physical substrate undergoes constant change. This perspective offers a radically different understanding of psychological continuity. Rather than being stored as fixed engrams in neural tissue, your memories might exist as dynamic information structures that your brain reconstructs through ongoing interaction with quantum fields. This could explain why memories have such a creative, reconstructive quality, why they change subtly each time you recall them, and why they seem to carry emotional and associative richness that exceeds simple data storage. Take a moment to reflect on one of your earliest memories. Notice how it doesn't feel like playing back a recording, but more like reimagining or reconstructing an experience. The quantum view suggests that this reconstructive quality isn't a bug in the memory system, it's a feature. Your recollections might emerge from ongoing interactions between your current neural architecture and quantum information fields that preserve the essential patterns of past experiences. This understanding has profound implications for therapeutic approaches to trauma, and psychological exist partly as quantum information patterns rather healing. If memories then fixed neural traces, then the possibility for genuine healing and transformation might be greater than classical neuroscience suggests. Interventions that influence quantum coherence in the brain might offer new pathways for resolving traumatic memories and fostering psychological growth. Some preliminary research has begun exploring whether practices like meditation, contemplative therapy, or even certain psychedelic experiences might work partly by influencing quantum processes in the brain. While this research remains highly speculative and unproven, it offers intriguing possibilities for understanding how consciousness can apparently reorganize itself in ways that transcend simple chemical or behavioral interventions. The quantum perspective also transforms our understanding of psychological development throughout the lifespan. Rather than viewing personality as fixed patterns established in childhood, quantum consciousness theories suggest that identity remains fluid and open to fundamental reorganization throughout life. Your capacity for growth and change might be limited not by neural plasticity alone, but by your ability to access and integrate new patterns of quantum information. This doesn't mean that personality becomes completely unstable or that individual characteristics lack continuity. Rather, it suggests that identity emerges from the dynamic interplay between stable quantum information patterns and the ever-changing conditions of your current neural architecture. You remain recognizably yourself while retaining the capacity for genuine transformation. As you contemplate your own journey of personal development, you might recognize periods when your sense of identity seemed to undergo significant shifts. These weren't just changes in behavior or belief, but alterations in your fundamental sense of who you are and what's possible for you. The quantum view suggests that these transformations might correspond to reorganizations in how your consciousness accesses and integrates quantum information fields. The implications extend to questions about what happens to personal identity during altered states of consciousness. Experiences reported during deep meditation, psychedelic states, or near-death episodes often involve profound shifts in the sense of self, sometimes including feelings of ego dissolution or expansion beyond ordinary personal boundaries. From a quantum perspective, these experiences might represent temporary alterations in how consciousness accesses quantum information networks. Rather than simply being hallucinations or brain chemistry artifacts, they might provide glimpses into the more fluid and interconnected nature of identity at the quantum level. Your ordinary sense of being a separate, bounded self might be just one way of organizing quantum information among many possible configurations. This understanding requires careful balance between openness to expanded possibilities and grounding in practical reality. While quantum consciousness theories suggest that identity might be more fluid than classical views assume, this doesn't mean that personal boundaries become meaningless or that individual responsibility disappears. Rather, it reveals identity to be a more dynamic and creative process than simple material continuity would allow. The therapeutic implications are particularly intriguing for understanding conditions like dissociative disorders or multiple personality phenomena. These conditions, which seem to involve disruptions in the normal unity of personal identity, might reflect alterations in quantum coherence patterns rather than purely psychological or neurological dysfunction. Some interpretations suggest that the human capacity for multiple aspects of personality, for different modes of being in different contexts, might reflect the quantum nature of consciousness itself. Your ability to be simultaneously a professional colleague, a loving family member, and a creative artist might emerge from quantum superposition states that allow multiple identity patterns to coexist within the same neural architecture. Take a breath and notice the different aspects of your own identity that become prominent in different situations. You might recognize that you're not exactly the same person in every context, that different environments and relationships seem to activate different facets of who you are. The quantum perspective suggests that these variations aren't inconsistencies to be resolved, but natural expressions of consciousness operating through multiple quantum information patterns. Recent advances in quantum biology have revealed that living systems regularly maintain quantum coherence across scales and timescales that were previously thought impossible. This suggests that biological organisms, including human brains, might be far more quantum than classical physics assumed. If consciousness depends on quantum processes, then the human capacity for complex, multifaceted identity might reflect sophisticated quantum information processing capabilities that evolution has developed over millions of years. The question of personal identity also intersects with the mystery of subjective experience itself. What makes your particular stream of consciousness uniquely yours rather than someone else's? Classical neuroscience struggles to explain why your brain generates your specific subjective experience rather than no experience at all, or why you experience your thoughts and sensations rather than existing as a philosophical zombie with no inner life. Quantum consciousness theories suggest that subjective experience might emerge from unique patterns of quantum information processing that arise from the specific architecture of your neural system interacting with universal quantum fields. Your particular way of organizing quantum information creates the distinctive quality of your consciousness, the unique flavor of what it's like to be you. This perspective implies that subjective experience isn't just an emergent property of complex neural networks, but a fundamental aspect of how quantum information organizes itself into coherent patterns. Your consciousness might be as unique as your fingerprints, not because of the specific atoms in your brain, but because of the particular way quantum information crystallizes through your neural architecture. The implications for understanding death and the continuity of consciousness become profound from this perspective. If personal identity depends partly on quantum information patterns that exist beyond classical neural boundaries, then the relationship between consciousness and physical death might be more complex than simple cessation. This doesn't necessarily support traditional religious concepts of personal survival after death, but it does suggest that the quantum information associated with individual consciousness might persist in some form even after biological processes cease. Some interpretations propose that consciousness might be more like a pattern that can exist independently of its current physical substrate, though this remains highly speculative and unproven. These possibilities require careful consideration of what we mean by personal survival and continuity. Even if quantum information patterns associated with individual consciousness persist after death, the question remains whether such persistence would constitute meaningful personal continuity or simply the preservation of abstract information structures. As you reflect on your own mortality and the mystery of what makes you uniquely you, notice how quantum consciousness theories neither provide easy answers nor dismiss profound questions. Instead, they reveal identity and consciousness to be far more subtle and mysterious than either pure materialism or traditional spirituality might suggest. The recognition that consciousness might operate through quantum processes that transcend classical boundaries doesn't eliminate the reality of death or the importance of individual life. Rather, it suggests that the relationship between personal identity and physical existence involves layers of complexity that we're only beginning to understand. This quantum perspective on identity also has practical implications for how we approach personal growth and self-understanding. If identity emerges from dynamic interactions between quantum information fields and neural architecture, then the work of becoming who you're meant to be might involve learning to access and integrate quantum information patterns that support your deepest potentials. Rather than viewing personal development as changing fixed personality traits through willpower or behavioral modification, the quantum view suggests that growth might work more through creating conditions that allow beneficial quantum information patterns to express themselves through your neural architecture. This could explain why the most profound personal transformations often feel more like discoveries of who you already are, rather than creations of entirely new characteristics. The contemplative traditions that have explored consciousness for thousands of years consistently report that deep self-inquiry reveals identity to be more fluid and interconnected than ordinary experience suggests. These reports align remarkably well with quantum consciousness theories that propose individual awareness as localized expressions of more universal quantum processes. Practices like meditation, contemplative inquiry, or even certain forms of therapy might work partly by allowing consciousness to access quantum information patterns that aren't normally available to ordinary awareness. The insights and transformations that emerge from these practices might represent genuine discoveries about the quantum foundations of identity rather than simply psychological reframes or belief changes. As you consider your own experiences of growth and self-discovery, you might recognize moments when new aspects of yourself seem to emerge from somewhere beyond your conscious control or understanding. These experiences of authentic transformation might correspond to your consciousness accessing quantum information patterns that were always potentially available but not previously integrated into your active identity structure. The quantum understanding of identity also offers new perspectives on the relationship between individual consciousness and collective human experience. If personal identity emerges from interactions with universal quantum information fields, then your individual development might naturally contribute to the evolution of human consciousness as a whole. This doesn't mean that personal growth automatically benefits everyone, but it suggests that the quantum information patterns you develop through your own consciousness work might become available to other minds that develop the capacity to access similar quantum fields. Your individual journey toward greater wisdom, compassion, and understanding might contribute to quantum information networks that support the development of these qualities in other conscious beings. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness propose that what we experience as individual genius, creativity, or wisdom might emerge from accessing quantum information networks that extend far beyond personal neural boundaries. The insights of great artists, scientists, and spiritual teachers might arise from their capacity to organize quantum information in ways that reveal universal patterns and possibilities. This perspective suggests that human potential might be far greater than individual neural capacity alone would allow. Your ability to access wisdom, creativity, and understanding might depend not just on your personal learning and development, but on your capacity to align with quantum information processes that carry the accumulated insights of human consciousness itself. Take a moment to reflect on experiences of insight or understanding that seem to arise from beyond your personal knowledge or reasoning. Many people report moments when solutions to complex problems seem to emerge spontaneously, when creative inspirations arrive fully formed, or when deep understanding arises without logical derivation. The quantum view suggests that these experiences might involve accessing quantum information networks that extend beyond individual neural processing. As we prepare to explore the ultimate implications of quantum consciousness for our understanding of reality itself, notice how these ideas about identity and personal development might be shifting your sense of who you are and what's possible for your own consciousness. The recognition that identity might emerge from quantum processes that transcend classical boundaries doesn't diminish the reality of your individual experience, but it reveals that experience to be far more mysterious and interconnected than you might have previously imagined. The journey into quantum consciousness reveals personal identity to be neither a fixed property of individual brains nor an illusion to be transcended, but a dynamic process through which universal quantum information organizes itself into unique patterns of awareness. Your sense of being yourself emerges from this process while remaining open to continuous transformation and expansion. This understanding transforms questions about personal development from problems of fixing or improving a static self into opportunities for discovering and expressing the quantum potentials that are always available through consciousness itself. Rather than trying to become someone different, you might focus on creating conditions that allow the deepest patterns of quantum information associated with your consciousness to express themselves more fully. The implications ripple through every aspect of human experience, from therapy and education to creativity and spiritual development. If identity emerges from quantum processes, then approaches that honor the subtle, emergent nature of consciousness might be more effective than those that try to impose change through direct control or manipulation. As we continue exploring these quantum mysteries, we'll discover how these insights about identity and consciousness might revolutionize our understanding of healing, learning, and the development of human potential itself. But before we venture into those territories, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about the nature of choice and personal agency in a quantum universe. The recognition that consciousness might operate through quantum mechanisms that transcend individual neural boundaries naturally leads us to examine how these processes might influence your experience of making decisions and exercising will. If your thoughts and choices emerge from quantum information processing that extends beyond your personal control, what does this mean for your sense of agency and responsibility? These questions about quantum consciousness and personal control open pathways into some of the deepest mysteries about free will, moral responsibility, and the nature of choice itself. The answers might challenge everything you've assumed about your own capacity to direct your life and shape your reality, leading us toward insights that are simultaneously liberating and unsettling. This exploration of how quantum processes might influence your sense of personal agency connects directly to the profound implications we've examined throughout our journey into quantum consciousness. As these ideas settle into your awareness, you might find yourself ready to explore even deeper questions about control, choice, and the quantum foundations of human agency, which brings us naturally to our recommended exploration. New quantum consciousness. Theory says you're not in control. The boundaries between your personal consciousness and the larger quantum universe might be dissolving in ways that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. As we continue our exploration of quantum consciousness, we encounter territories where the implications become so profound that they reshape our understanding not just of mind and matter, but of the very fabric of existence. Recent developments in quantum field theory have begun to reveal consciousness as potentially far more than an emergent property of individual brains. Some interpretations suggest that awareness might be woven into the quantum vacuum itself, that substrate of reality where virtual particles flicker in and out of existence in an eternal dance of creation and annihilation. This quantum vacuum, once thought to be empty space, now appears to be anything but empty. It seethes with activity, with fluctuations that some researchers propose might carry information, patterns that could serve as the foundation for consciousness itself. If this interpretation proves correct, then your awareness might not be generated by your brain, but rather organized and focused by it, like light being concentrated through a lens. Picture this possibility for a moment. Instead of consciousness arising from neural networks, your brain might function more like a quantum antenna, tuning into information fields that permeate all of space. Your thoughts, emotions, and experiences would emerge from the intersection between these universal fields and the specific biological architecture of your nervous system. This perspective finds surprising support in recent discoveries about the nature of information in quantum systems. Physicists have demonstrated that information appears to be more fundamental than matter or energy, that physical reality might actually emerge from underlying informational structures, rather than information emerging from physical processes. The implications are staggering. If consciousness is fundamentally informational, and if quantum information fields permeate the universe, then awareness might be a basic feature of reality rather than a rare accident of biological evolution. Your individual consciousness would represent a unique pattern of organization within these universal information fields, distinct but not separate from the larger quantum substrate. Take a deep breath and consider how this might change your sense of connection to the cosmos. You're not just an isolated observer looking out at an external universe. You're a localized expression of the universe, becoming aware of itself, a temporary concentration of cosmic consciousness, exploring its own nature through the unique lens of your individual perspective. This understanding emerges from cutting-edge research in quantum information theory, where scientists have discovered that entanglement and quantum coherence operate at scales and in environments previously thought impossible. The discovery of quantum effects in photosynthesis, in bird navigation, and potentially in microtubules within neurons suggests that biology has evolved sophisticated mechanisms for harnessing quantum phenomena. But perhaps the most intriguing development comes from studies of what researchers call quantum superradiance in biological systems. Scientists have observed that certain molecular networks can exhibit collective quantum behaviors that exceed what individual components could achieve alone. These networks appear to process information in ways that transcend classical computational limits, exhibiting properties that some interpretations suggest might be necessary for conscious experience. The tryptophan networks found abundantly in neural microtubules represent particularly compelling examples of these quantum biological systems. Recent experiments have demonstrated that these amino acid chains can maintain quantum coherence and exhibit superradiance even in the warm, noisy environment of living cells. This discovery addresses one of the main objections to quantum consciousness theories by showing that quantum effects can indeed persist in biological systems. As you contemplate these findings, notice how they might be shifting your understanding of the relationship between your mind and the physical world. The boundaries between biological and quantum, between individual and universal, begin to blur in ways that reveal consciousness as something far more mysterious and interconnected than classical science suggested. This quantum view of consciousness also offers new perspectives on some of humanity's oldest questions about the nature of wisdom and insight. Throughout history, individuals have reported accessing knowledge or understanding that seem to come from beyond their personal learning or reasoning. These experiences of inspiration, revelation, or sudden insight might reflect the capacity of consciousness to access quantum information networks that extend far beyond individual neural processing. The mathematical discoveries of ancient civilizations, the artistic visions of great creators, the spiritual insights of contemplative practitioners. All of these might emerge from consciousness connecting with quantum information fields that carry the accumulated wisdom of human experience itself. This doesn't diminish the individual creativity or effort involved, but it suggests that human potential might be far greater than isolated neural capacity alone would allow. Consider your own experiences of sudden understanding or creative breakthrough. There are likely moments when solutions to complex problems seem to arrive fully formed, when creative ideas emerged without logical derivation, or when deep insights arose beyond your conscious reasoning. The quantum perspective suggests that these experiences might involve your consciousness temporarily accessing information patterns that exist within universal quantum fields. This possibility has profound implications for education, creativity, and human development. If consciousness can indeed access quantum information networks, then learning might involve not just accumulating facts or skills, but developing the capacity to align with information fields that contain the patterns we seek to understand. The most effective approaches to education and personal growth might be those that create conditions for this quantum resonance, rather than trying to force information transfer through purely classical means. Recent research in neuroscience has begun to explore how different mental states affect the brain's capacity for information integration and processing. Studies of meditation, contemplative practices, and even certain psychedelic experiences suggest that alterations in ordinary consciousness can lead to enhanced creativity, problem-solving abilities, and feelings of connection or understanding. While this research remains preliminary and speculative, some interpretations propose that these practices might work partly by influencing quantum coherence in neural systems. The relaxation of habitual mental patterns, the cultivation of present moment awareness, and the development of non-judgmental observation might create conditions more conducive to quantum information processing. This doesn't mean that meditation or contemplative practices directly control quantum mechanics, but rather that certain mental approaches might allow quantum processes to operate with less interference from classical neural activity. The states of expanded awareness reported by experienced practitioners might correspond to enhanced access to quantum information fields that are normally filtered out by ordinary conscious processing. As you reflect on these possibilities, you might find yourself becoming more curious about your own potential for accessing these subtle dimensions of consciousness. The quantum view suggests that every human being might possess capacities for awareness and understanding that far exceed what we typically access through ordinary mental functioning. This brings us to one of the most intriguing implications of quantum consciousness research for understanding the evolution of human awareness itself. If consciousness can indeed access quantum information networks, then the development of human civilization might reflect not just the accumulation of knowledge through external transmission, but the gradual enhancement of our species' capacity to connect with quantum information fields. The great leaps in human understanding, the sudden appearance of sophisticated technologies and ideas in ancient civilizations, the simultaneous discovery of similar concepts by researchers working independently, all of these phenomena might reflect humanity's growing ability to access quantum information patterns that exist beyond individual minds. Some interpretations suggest that what we call collective human consciousness might actually involve quantum coherence networks that span across individual brains, allowing for the sharing of information and insights through mechanisms that transcend ordinary communication. This remains highly speculative and unproven, but it offers intriguing possibilities for understanding how human knowledge and wisdom develop across cultures and generations. The implications extend to questions about the future evolution of human consciousness itself. If awareness can indeed access quantum information fields, then the development of technologies that enhance quantum coherence in biological systems might lead to expanded forms of human consciousness. This could involve not just individual enhancement, but the emergence of new forms of collective awareness that operate through quantum networks spanning multiple minds. These possibilities push us into territory where the boundaries between science fiction and scientific speculation become increasingly difficult to maintain. Yet the rapid advances in quantum biology, quantum computing, and our understanding of consciousness suggest that ideas that once seemed purely fantastical might be approaching the realm of experimental investigation. Take a moment to imagine what expanded quantum consciousness might actually feel like. Rather than simply having more information or processing power, it might involve a fundamentally different relationship to knowledge and understanding. Instead of accumulating facts through study and reasoning, insights might arise through direct resonance with quantum information patterns that carry the essence of what you seek to understand. This form of consciousness might operate more through recognition than reasoning, more through alignment than analysis. The development of wisdom and understanding might involve learning to attune yourself to quantum information fields rather than trying to construct knowledge through purely logical means. The contemplative traditions of various cultures have long described states of awareness that sound remarkably similar to what we might expect from quantum-enhanced consciousness. Reports of direct knowing, of understanding that transcends conceptual thought, of insights that arrive complete and self-evident, all of these align with what quantum consciousness theories might predict about awareness that operates through quantum information processing. Yet these traditions have also emphasized that such states require careful preparation and gradual development. The capacity to access quantum information networks might not be something that can be achieved through technology alone, but might require the cultivation of mental qualities like concentration, equanimity, and receptive awareness that create optimal conditions for quantum coherence. This suggests that the future development of human consciousness might involve a synthesis between technological enhancement and contemplative cultivation, between quantum engineering and spiritual development. The most advanced forms of human awareness might emerge from the integration of external quantum technologies with internal practices that optimize the mind's natural quantum processing capabilities. As you contemplate these possibilities, notice how they might be changing your sense of what it means to be human in a quantum universe. Rather than being isolated biological machines struggling to understand an external world, we might be expressions of cosmic consciousness itself. Temporary organizations of universal awareness, exploring its own infinite potential through the unique perspective of individual experience. This quantum perspective on human nature offers both tremendous hope and profound responsibility. If consciousness can indeed access universal information fields, then our potential for wisdom, creativity, and understanding might be virtually unlimited. Yet this potential comes with a responsibility to develop the mental qualities and ethical foundations necessary to handle such expanded awareness wisely. The recognition that consciousness might operate through quantum mechanisms that connect us to universal information networks doesn't diminish the importance of individual effort and development. Rather, it reveals that our personal growth might contribute to the evolution of consciousness itself, that our individual journey toward greater wisdom and compassion might enhance the quantum information fields from which all awareness emerges. Recent experiments in quantum biology have revealed that living systems regularly perform quantum computations that exceed the efficiency of photosynthesis, the precision of quantum capabilities of classical computers. The navigation in migratory animals and the coherence of quantum processes in neural microtubules all demonstrate that biology has evolved remarkable quantum technologies over millions of years of evolution. These discoveries suggest that quantum consciousness might not be a futuristic possibility, but a present reality that we're only beginning to understand. Your brain might already be operating as a sophisticated quantum computer, processing information through mechanisms that transcend classical computation while remaining largely invisible to ordinary awareness. This hidden quantum dimension of consciousness might explain some of the most mysterious aspects of mental life. The unity of conscious experience despite the distributed nature of brain activity, the capacity for creative insights that transcend logical reasoning, the ability to integrate vast amounts of information into coherent understanding. All of these might depend on quantum information processing that operates below the threshold of conscious awareness. The implications for understanding mental health and psychological well-being become particularly intriguing from this quantum perspective. If consciousness depends partly on quantum coherence in neural systems, then disruptions in mental health might involve breakdowns in quantum information processing rather than purely chemical or psychological dysfunction. This doesn't mean that traditional approaches to mental health are invalid, but it suggests that comprehensive treatment might need to address quantum as well as classical aspects of neural function. Some preliminary research has begun exploring whether practices that influence quantum coherence might offer new therapeutic approaches, though this remains highly speculative and unproven. The quantum understanding of consciousness also offers new perspectives on the relationship between individual healing and collective well-being. If consciousness operates through quantum networks that extend beyond individual brains, then your personal journey toward greater mental health and psychological integration might contribute to quantum information fields that support healing in other conscious beings. This perspective finds resonance in contemplative traditions that have long recognized the interconnected nature of consciousness and the way individual development contributes to collective wisdom. The quantum view provides a potential physical mechanism for these ancient insights about the relationship between personal and universal healing. As you reflect on your own mental health and psychological well-being, you might consider how quantum consciousness theories could inform approaches to personal development and healing. Rather than viewing psychological problems as purely individual issues to be solved through isolated effort, the quantum perspective suggests that healing might involve aligning yourself with quantum information patterns that naturally support psychological coherence and well-being. This doesn't mean abandoning personal responsibility or relying on mystical forces for healing. Rather, it suggests that effective approaches to mental health might involve creating conditions that allow quantum coherence to operate more freely in neural systems, while taking practical steps to address specific psychological challenges. The integration of quantum and classical approaches to consciousness might offer the most comprehensive understanding of mental life. Your thoughts and emotions would emerge from the interaction between quantum information processing in microtubules and classical neural networks, between individual brain activity and universal quantum fields, between personal experience and cosmic awareness. This integrated perspective reveals consciousness as neither purely individual nor purely universal, but as a dynamic process that bridges these apparent opposites. Your personal awareness would remain uniquely yours while participating in larger networks of consciousness that extend throughout the quantum foundations of reality itself. Take a deep breath and notice how these ideas might be settling into your understanding. The recognition that consciousness might operate through quantum mechanisms doesn't solve all the mysteries of awareness, but it opens new possibilities for investigation and exploration. It suggests that the nature of mind might be far more subtle and wonderful than either pure materialism or traditional spirituality alone might suggest. The journey into quantum consciousness reveals awareness to be a fundamental feature of reality, rather than an accidental byproduct of complex neural activity. Your capacity for experience, understanding, and choice might emerge from quantum processes that connect you to the deepest levels of cosmic organization, while maintaining the unique perspective that makes you irreplaceably yourself. As we prepare to explore even deeper implications of these quantum mysteries, you might find yourself wondering about the ultimate nature of reality itself, and how consciousness fits into the largest questions about existence, meaning, and the purpose of the universe. These quantum insights about the nature of mind naturally lead us toward even more profound questions about the role of consciousness in the cosmic story itself. The recognition that awareness might be woven into the quantum foundations of reality transforms our understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. Rather than being isolated observers, trying to make sense of an external universe, we might be expressions of the universe's own capacity for self-awareness. Temporary concentrations of cosmic consciousness, exploring its own infinite potential through the lens of individual experience. This perspective suggests that the emergence of consciousness in the universe wasn't an accident, but an inevitable expression of the quantum information processing capabilities that appear to be built into the fabric of reality itself. The evolution of awareness from the simplest quantum processes to the complex forms of consciousness we experience as human beings might represent the universe gradually awakening to its own nature. If this interpretation proves correct, then your individual consciousness participates in something far grander than personal existence. Your thoughts, experiences, and journey of understanding contribute to the cosmic process of self-discovery, to the universe coming to know itself through the countless perspectives of conscious beings throughout the cosmos. These insights about quantum consciousness and cosmic awareness naturally connect to deeper questions about purpose, meaning, and the ultimate significance of conscious existence. The recognition that your awareness might emerge from quantum processes that extend throughout the universe opens possibilities for understanding your life as part of a larger cosmic story of awakening and discovery. As these profound implications settle into your awareness, you might find yourself questioning fundamental assumptions about agency, control, and the nature of choice itself in a quantum universe. This brings us naturally to examine how quantum consciousness theories challenge traditional notions of free will and personal control, leading us toward insights explored in depth in our recommended exploration. New quantum consciousness. Theory says, you're not in control. As we stand at the threshold of understanding, we find ourselves confronted with questions of what consciousness truly is, questions that reach into the very heart of existence itself. The quantum theory of consciousness doesn't just challenge our assumptions about the mind, it transforms our understanding of what it means to be aware in a universe where the boundaries between observer and observed dissolve into something far more mysterious. The mounting experimental evidence we've explored paints a picture of consciousness that exists at the intersection of quantum possibility and biological reality. Your awareness right now, as you process these ideas and feel the subtle shifts in your understanding, might emerge from quantum processes that operate on scales both infinitesimally small and cosmically vast. Consider for a moment the profound implications of what we've discovered. If consciousness indeed involves quantum computations in microtubules, if awareness can access information networks that extend beyond individual brains, if your thoughts and experiences arise from the collapse of quantum superpositions into definite neural states, then the nature of being conscious becomes something far more extraordinary than classical neuroscience ever suggested. The resistance from many physicists to these ideas reveals something deeper than scientific skepticism. It exposes the profound challenge that quantum consciousness poses to our entire worldview. For centuries, we've built our understanding of reality on the assumption that mind and matter are fundamentally separate, that consciousness is something that emerges from complex arrangements of unconscious particles. Quantum consciousness theories suggest this assumption might be backwards. What if matter itself emerges from consciousness? What if the quantum fields that underlie all physical reality are themselves expressions of cosmic awareness exploring its own infinite potential? These aren't just abstract philosophical speculations anymore, they're questions that arise naturally from the mathematics and experimental evidence of quantum mechanics itself. As you sit with these possibilities, notice how they might be shifting something fundamental in your relationship to existence. The recognition that consciousness might be woven into the fabric of reality itself doesn't diminish the mystery of awareness. It reveals that mystery to be far grander and more beautiful than we ever imagined. Recent developments in quantum biology have shown us that life has been harnessing quantum effects for millions of years. The efficiency of photosynthesis, the precision of bird navigation, the coherence of quantum processes in neural tissue, all of these demonstrate that the boundary between quantum and classical, between microscopic and macroscopic, is far more permeable than we once believed. Your brain might already be operating as a quantum computer more sophisticated than anything human technology has achieved. The unity of your conscious experience, your capacity for creative insight, your ability to integrate vast amounts of information into coherent understanding. All of this might depend on quantum information processing that operates below the threshold of ordinary awareness. Take a deep breath and consider what this means for your daily experience of being conscious. The thoughts arising in your mind right now, the emotions you feel, the sense of understanding that emerges as you contemplate these ideas. All of this might reflect quantum processes that connect your individual awareness to universal information networks spanning the cosmos. This perspective transforms questions about consciousness from purely scientific puzzles into deeply personal inquiries about the nature of your own existence. If your awareness emerges from quantum processes that transcend the classical boundaries of your physical brain, then who you are extends far beyond what you might have previously imagined. The implications ripple through every aspect of human experience. Mental health and psychological well-being might involve quantum coherence patterns as much as neurotransmitter balance. Personal growth and development might work through accessing quantum information fields rather than simply changing behavioral patterns. The capacity for wisdom, creativity, and understanding might depend on your ability to align with quantum processes that naturally tend toward greater coherence and integration. Yet perhaps the most profound implication involves the relationship between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness itself. If your personal thoughts and experiences emerge from interactions with universal quantum fields, then your individual journey of growth and understanding contributes to something far larger than personal development. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness might be the universe's way of knowing itself, that the evolution of awareness from quantum processes to human understanding represents reality becoming self-aware through countless individual perspectives. Your unique way of experiencing and understanding the world would contribute irreplaceable information to this cosmic process of self-discovery. As these ideas settle into your awareness, you might find yourself experiencing a subtle shift in how you relate to your own thoughts and experiences. Instead of being produced entirely by your individual brain, they might emerge from your participation in quantum information networks that extend throughout the universe. Your personal awareness would remain uniquely yours while being part of something infinitely larger. This understanding doesn't diminish individual responsibility or make personal choices meaningless. Rather, it reveals choice and responsibility to be more subtle and mysterious than classical determinism would suggest. Your decisions might emerge from quantum processes that explore multiple possibilities simultaneously before collapsing into specific actions, introducing genuine novelty into the universe through conscious choice. The recognition that consciousness might operate through quantum mechanisms also transforms our understanding of human potential itself. If awareness can indeed access quantum information fields, then your capacity for insight, creativity, and understanding might be limited not by individual neural capacity alone, but by your ability to align with information networks that carry the accumulated wisdom of consciousness itself. This perspective finds remarkable resonance with contemplative traditions that have explored consciousness for thousands of years. The states of expanded awareness, universal compassion, and direct knowing that mystics have reported might correspond to enhanced access to quantum information processing networks that extend far beyond individual brains. The convergence between ancient wisdom and quantum science suggests that human understanding of consciousness might be approaching a synthesis that bridges subjective experience and objective knowledge. This synthesis could revolutionize not just our scientific understanding of mind, but also our philosophical and spiritual relationship with existence itself. Recent experiments continue to provide evidence that quantum effects can persist in biological systems under conditions previously thought impossible. The discovery of superradiance in tryptophan networks, the demonstration of quantum coherence at body temperature, the evidence that anesthetic effects depend on quantum properties, all of these findings make it increasingly difficult to dismiss the possibility that consciousness has quantum foundations. Yet significant challenges remain. The warm, noisy environment of the brain continues to pose questions about how delicate quantum processes could maintain coherence long enough to influence conscious experience. The scale problem, how quantum effects in individual microtubules could produce unified conscious experience across entire brains, requires mechanisms we don't yet fully understand. These challenges don't invalidate quantum consciousness theories, but they remind us that we're still in the early stages of understanding how consciousness might emerge from quantum processes. The questions are as profound as they are difficult, requiring new experimental techniques, mathematical frameworks, and perhaps entirely new ways of thinking about the relationship between mind and matter. As you contemplate the current state of our understanding, notice how the mystery of consciousness remains beautifully intact even as our knowledge deepens. The quantum perspective doesn't solve the hard problem of consciousness. It reveals that problem to be even more interesting and complex than we previously imagined. The journey into quantum consciousness ultimately returns us to the fundamental question we began with. What does it mean to be aware? The answer emerging from quantum theories is both humbling and awe-inspiring. Consciousness appears to be neither a simple property of individual brains, nor a mysterious force operating outside physical reality, but a bridge between quantum possibility and classical actuality, between universal process and individual experience. Your awareness right now, as you reflect on these ideas and feel the subtle shifts in your understanding, participates in this bridge. You're not just thinking about consciousness, you're experiencing it, living it, being it in ways that might connect you to quantum processes operating at the deepest levels of reality itself. The implications extend far beyond academic understanding into practical questions about how we live, how we grow, and how we relate to each other and the cosmos. If consciousness indeed operates through quantum mechanisms, then approaches to education, therapy, personal development, and spiritual growth that honor the subtle, emergent nature of awareness might be more effective than those that try to impose change through classical control strategies. This quantum understanding also suggests new possibilities for technology and human enhancement. As quantum computers become more sophisticated, they might serve not just as powerful computational tools, but as platforms for investigating consciousness itself. The prospect of quantum-enhanced artificial intelligence, brain-computer interfaces that operate through quantum coherence, and technologies that support expanded human awareness all emerge as possibilities on the horizon. Yet perhaps the most important implication involves the simple recognition that consciousness remains fundamentally mysterious. No matter how much we learn about quantum processes in microtubules, about quantum information networks, or about the role of quantum coherence in awareness, the fact that there's something it's like to be you remains as remarkable and inexplicable as ever. The quantum theory of consciousness doesn't diminish this mystery. It reveals it to be more beautiful and complex than we ever imagined. Your capacity for experience, understanding, and choice emerges from quantum processes that connect you to the fundamental information processing systems of the universe, while maintaining the unique perspective that makes you irreplaceably yourself. As we reach the end of this exploration, take a moment to notice your own awareness one more time. The thoughts you're having, the understanding you've developed, the questions that are forming, all of this might reflect quantum processes that bridge the gap between your individual mind and the cosmic context from which all consciousness might emerge. The journey into quantum consciousness reveals that the most intimate aspect of your existence, your own awareness, might also be the most universal, connecting you through quantum processes to the deepest foundations of reality itself. Whether or not these theories prove correct in their specific details, they remind us that consciousness remains one of the universe's most profound mysteries, worthy of our continued wonder, investigation, and respect. In contemplating these quantum mysteries of mind, we've discovered that consciousness might be far more subtle and interconnected than classical science suggested. Yet these insights about the quantum nature of awareness naturally lead to even more profound questions about agency, choice, and personal control in a quantum universe. The recognition that your thoughts and decisions might emerge from quantum processes that transcend individual neural boundaries opens territory where our assumptions about free will and personal responsibility become beautifully complex. If consciousness indeed operates through quantum mechanisms that introduce genuine novelty into the universe, then your experience of making choices might be neither completely determined nor completely random, but something more mysterious, a participation in quantum processes that explore multiple possibilities before collapsing into specific decisions. This brings us naturally to examine how quantum consciousness theories might transform our understanding of personal agency itself, leading us toward the profound implications explored in new quantum consciousness. Theory says you're not in control. As consciousness potentially reaches toward quantum connections that transcend individual minds, we encounter one of the most revolutionary implications for human civilization itself. The possibility that awareness might operate through quantum networks spanning multiple brains suggests that collective human consciousness could be more than a metaphor. It might be a genuine physical phenomenon with quantum foundations. Picture for a moment the great leaps in human understanding that have occurred throughout history. The simultaneous development of calculus by Newton and Leibniz in different countries. The independent discovery of evolution by Darwin and Wallace. The concurrent insights into quantum mechanics that emerged from multiple researchers across Europe in the early 20th century. These parallel breakthroughs might reflect more than coincidence or shared cultural conditions. Some interpretations of quantum consciousness suggest that when human minds grapple with similar problems or explore related territories of understanding, quantum coherences might form between neural networks in different individuals. This remains highly speculative and unproven, but it offers an intriguing possibility for understanding how insights and discoveries seem to emerge simultaneously in minds that have no direct contact with each other. The implications extend beyond individual creativity to questions about the evolution of human knowledge itself. If consciousness can indeed access quantum information networks, then the development of human civilization might reflect not just the accumulation of knowledge through external transmission, but our species' gradually increasing capacity to connect with quantum information fields that carry the accumulated wisdom of consciousness. Take a breath and consider how this perspective might reframe your understanding of learning and discovery. When you encounter a new idea that resonates deeply, when you suddenly grasp a concept that had previously eluded you, when you feel that satisfying click of understanding, you might be experiencing more than individual neural processing. These moments of insight could correspond to your consciousness accessing quantum information patterns that exist within larger networks of human understanding. Recent developments in network science have revealed that complex systems, from ecosystems to economies to social networks, often exhibit emergent properties that transcend what individual components could achieve alone. The human brain itself demonstrates this principle, with consciousness emerging from the coordinated activity of billions of neurons that individually possess no awareness. Quantum consciousness theories suggest that this emergence might occur at even larger scales. Just as individual neurons contribute to personal awareness, individual minds might participate in forms of collective consciousness that operate through quantum coherence networks spanning multiple brains. This doesn't mean that you lose individual autonomy or that groupthink becomes inevitable. Rather, it suggests that human consciousness might naturally tend toward greater coherence and integration when conditions allow. The implications for understanding social movements, cultural shifts, and collective human behavior become particularly intriguing from rapid spread of ideas, the emergence this quantum perspective, the of social trends that seem to arise spontaneously across different regions, the way certain concepts suddenly become part of collective discourse. All of these phenomena might involve quantum coherence effects that operate below the threshold of ordinary awareness. Consider how social media and global communication networks have accelerated these processes in recent decades. As human minds become more connected through technology, we might also be creating conditions more conducive to quantum coherence between consciousness. The result could be an acceleration in the evolution of human understanding itself, as quantum information networks become more accessible to larger numbers of minds. This perspective offers new ways of thinking about the challenges facing human civilization. Rather than viewing problems like climate change, social inequality, or political polarization as issues that must be solved through purely external means, the quantum view suggests that these challenges might also involve coherence patterns in collective human consciousness. If human awareness operates partly through quantum networks, then shifts in how we collectively think about and relate to global challenges could influence the probability landscapes from which solutions emerge. This doesn't mean that positive thinking alone can solve complex problems, but it suggests that the quality of collective human consciousness might play a more important role in shaping outcomes than purely mechanical approaches to social change would recognize. The cultivation of wisdom, compassion, and understanding in individual minds might contribute to quantum information fields that make these qualities more accessible to other conscious beings. Your personal journey toward greater awareness and ethical development could literally enhance the conditions from which collective wisdom emerges, though this remains a speculative idea without scientific consensus. This brings us to one of the most profound implications of quantum consciousness for understanding human purpose and meaning. If individual awareness participates in larger networks of consciousness, if your personal development contributes to quantum information fields that support the evolution of human understanding, then your life might have significance that extends far beyond personal achievement or happiness. The contemplative traditions of various cultures have long suggested that individual spiritual development serves not just personal liberation, but the welfare of all beings. The quantum perspective provides a potential physical mechanism for these ancient insights about the interconnected nature of consciousness and the way personal growth contributes to collective well-being. As you reflect on your own life and the choices you make each day, you might consider how quantum consciousness theories could inform your sense of purpose and responsibility. Rather than viewing your existence as isolated from others or your development as purely personal, the quantum view suggests that your journey toward greater wisdom and compassion might contribute to quantum information networks that support similar development in other minds. This doesn't impose additional burdens or suggest that you're responsible for solving humanity's problems through individual effort alone. Rather, it reveals that your personal growth and the cultivation of beneficial mental qualities might naturally contribute to conditions that support collective human flourishing. The boundary between personal development and service to others becomes more fluid when viewed through quantum lenses. Recent research in social psychology has begun to explore how individual mental states can influence group dynamics and collective behavior. Studies suggest that the presence of individuals who maintain calm, centered awareness can help groups navigate conflict more effectively and make wiser decisions. While this research doesn't prove quantum effects in group consciousness, it aligns with what we might expect if consciousness can indeed influence quantum coherence patterns across multiple minds. The implications extend to questions about leadership, education, and social organization. If consciousness operates through quantum networks, then approaches that honor the subtle, interconnected nature of awareness might be more effective than those that rely purely on external control or manipulation. Leaders who cultivate genuine wisdom and compassion might influence groups not just through words and actions, but through quantum coherence effects that create more conducive conditions for collective insight and cooperation. Educational approaches that recognize the quantum nature of consciousness might focus less on information transfer and more on creating conditions that allow students to access quantum information networks naturally. This could involve contemplative practices, collaborative inquiry, and learning environments that support the kind of mental states conducive to quantum coherence. Take a moment to imagine what human civilization might become if these quantum possibilities prove correct. Rather than being composed of isolated individuals competing for limited resources, humanity might gradually recognize itself as a collective intelligence capable of accessing quantum information networks that contain solutions to our greatest challenges. This doesn't mean that individual differences disappear or that diversity becomes unimportant. Rather, it suggests that diversity of perspective might be essential for accessing the full range of quantum information patterns available to collective consciousness. Your unique way of understanding and experiencing reality would contribute irreplaceable information to this larger network of human awareness. The recognition that consciousness might operate through quantum mechanisms also transforms our understanding of what it means to be human in the 21st century. As technology continues to advance and global challenges become more complex, our survival and flourishing might depend not just on external innovations, but on our capacity to access the quantum foundations of consciousness itself. Some interpretations suggest that humanity might be approaching a phase transition in consciousness, a shift from primarily individual awareness to more integrated collective intelligence. This wouldn't mean losing personal identity or autonomy, but rather recognizing that individual consciousness naturally participates in larger networks of awareness when conditions allow. The development of quantum technologies, the increasing interconnection of global communication systems, and the growing interest in contemplative practices and consciousness research might all be contributing to conditions that support this potential transition. Whether such a shift actually occurs remains to be seen, but the quantum perspective suggests that human consciousness possesses capacities that we've only begun to explore. As you contemplate these possibilities for collective human consciousness, notice how they might be affecting your sense of connection to other people and to humanity as a whole. The recognition that your individual awareness might participate in quantum networks spanning multiple minds doesn't diminish your personal uniqueness, but it reveals that uniqueness to be part of a larger tapestry of consciousness, exploring its own infinite potential. The journey into quantum consciousness ultimately returns us to fundamental questions about what it means to be human and what our species might become. The answers emerging from quantum theories suggest that we are neither isolated biological machines nor purely spiritual beings, but something more interesting, consciousness itself exploring its own nature through the countless perspectives of individual minds while maintaining connections through quantum processes that span the cosmos. Your thoughts right now, as you consider these ideas about collective consciousness and human potential, might themselves be participating in quantum networks that connect your understanding to the developing insights of other minds exploring similar territories. The boundary between individual and collective, between personal insight and shared wisdom, becomes beautifully blurred when viewed through quantum lenses. The quantum theory of consciousness leaves us suspended between wonder and uncertainty, much like the particles it seeks to explain. We've journeyed through experimental evidence that hints at quantum processes in neural microtubules, explored the possibility that awareness might emerge from quantum computations that bridge mind and matter, and contemplated implications that could revolutionize our understanding of what it means to be conscious. Whether consciousness truly operates through quantum mechanisms remains an open question, one that continues to divide physicists and philosophers alike. The resistance to these theories reveals as much about the nature of scientific paradigms as it does about consciousness itself. Yet the accumulating evidence from xenon isotope experiments to quantum coherence in biological systems suggests that the boundary between quantum and classical reality might be far more permeable than we once believed. What remains certain is that consciousness itself endures as one of the universe's most profound mysteries. Your awareness right now, processing these ideas and forming new understanding, participates in something that transcends our current ability to fully explain. Whether that something involves quantum processes or emerges through mechanisms we haven't yet discovered, it represents a bridge between the subjective certainty of experience and the objective methods of science. The implications we've explored, from quantum networks spanning multiple minds to the possibility that individual awareness contributes to cosmic self-discovery, invite us to reconsider our place in the universe. They suggest that consciousness might be neither an accident of biological evolution nor separate from physical reality, but something more mysterious that connects the most intimate aspects of personal experience to the fundamental processes that shape existence itself. As you reflect on this journey into quantum consciousness, you might find yourself questioning not just the nature of mind, but the very foundations of choice and control in a universe where quantum processes might influence your deepest decisions. This naturally leads us toward our recommended exploration. New quantum consciousness theory says you're not in control. New quantum consciousness theory says you're not in control.